The family of Mary Leota Daniel BEM, SLPM, JP, retired principal of Gara Babono, announces that she went to meet her maker on the 24th of November 2014 at 5:20 p.m. at the St. Clair Medical Hospital in Trinidad and Tobago at the age of 67 years. She passed on the baton to the following: her 94-year-old mother, Mrs. Josephine Eunice Seeley of Gara Babono, her beloved husband, Gregory Sonny Boy Daniel, retired employee of C.O. Williams, her three daughters, Marva Daniel, principal of the Castries Comprehensive Secondary School, Lorraine Ferguson and her husband, Claudius Ferguson, and family of Dairy Soul, Juliana Foster, senior research analyst of Trinidad, and her husband, Dr. Jerome Foster, and family of Trinidad and Tobago. Her three sons, Derek Daniel and family of Odsa Bexar, Neil Daniel and wife Urella Daniel of Hartford, Connecticut, Tyrell Daniel and family of Gara. Her 11 grandchildren, Claudine and Latifa Ferguson of Dairy Soul, Maxine Daniel of London, Daniel Daniel of Martinique, O'Neill Devoe of the Bahamas, Daniela and Lily Daniel, Rebecca and Ruben Foster of Trinidad, Dante Daniel of Gara, newborn baby Mario Daniel of Odsa, Bexar. Her four stepdaughters, Rosemary Rosie Nelson and family of Gara, Barbara Mafre Martinez and family of Hartford, Connecticut, Annette Bennett and family of Sangre Grande, Trinidad, Velda Flavius and family of the UK, her stepson, Hemans Moses Jabatis and family of Pebush Bavano, two sisters, Florence Henville and family of Boseju and London, Andrina Maureen Ale and family of Martinique, five brothers, Evans Adolph and family of O'Meara Road, Trinidad, Lawrence Seeley and family of London, George Leroy Seeley and family of Maryland, Kenneth Seeley and family of Gara, Stephen Seeley, who is also her godson, and family of Maryland, USA. Brothers-in-law Mr. Clyde Henville of Boseju, Mr. Winston Sonny Charles and family of Bogies, Terence Bissett and children of Hartford, Connecticut, Donald Charles and family of Trinidad and New York, Franklin Bissett and family of London, Orland Charles and family of French Guiana, sisters-in-law, Mrs. Giselle Harewood and husband of Hartford, Connecticut, Mrs. Raymond Charles of French Guiana, Mrs. Morella Seeley of Essex, England, Mrs. Jennifer Charles of Trinidad and Tobago, Mrs. Susanna Adolph of Trinidad and Tobago, Mrs. Marianne Charles of Bogies Babono, Mrs. Yulin James and family of Cicero, employee of MNC, Mrs. Gwendoline Seeley of Maryland, USA, Mrs. Dana Seeley of Maryland, USA, Mrs. Carol Seeley of Gara Babono, Grand Aunt Danielle Charles of French Guiana, 16 nieces, 14 nephews, 13 grand-nieces and 10 grand-nephews, countless cousins and relatives including the Seeley, Christophe, John and Emilia families of Gara, Foisson, Pebush, Monnier, Marisil, Maryland and London, Gilberts and Adolphe families of Gara, New York and Trinidad, Bissets of Gara, Babono, Denry and Choiseul, three godchildren, Tristan Lorenzen, Miguel Trim and Kizzy Adolphe, numerous good friends including Mr. and Mrs. Michael Toussaint of Babono, Mrs. Imelda Augustine and family of Gara Babono, Father Michel Francis and the clergy of the Archdiocese of Castries, Mr. and Mrs. Stream of Casaba, the members of the Gara Mothers and Fathers Group and the Babono Mothers and Fathers Groups and Central Committee, Mr. James Clement and family of Pebush Babono, Mr. and Mrs. David Lorenzen of Tiruche Castries, Mr. Hughes Christophe Joseph Louis of Martinique, Mrs. Italy Joseph of Gara, Evelyn of the Hardest Hard restaurant in Banan, Castries, Pierre and Paulette Govindozaro and family of Martinique. Special mention and thanks to all the doctors and nurses of St. Clair Medical and Evelyn and staff of the Hardest Hard restaurant in Banan. The celebratory Mass for Mrs. Mary Leota Daniel is scheduled for Wednesday, 10th December 2014 at 2 p.m. at the Good Shepherd Church in Babonneau. The body is now resting at the Crick's Funeral Home. May her soul continue to rest in peace.